Hello BookTube, it's Leah Cooper here, and today I'm bringing you something I didn't plan. So I sat down today to do my June wrap-up part 1, and of course I had to talk about the first book I read this month, which was Conjuring of Light. Now, Conjuring of Light is of course the third book in the Shades of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab, and originally, like 2 months ago, I had planned on doing a review for this entire trilogy, but after reading Conjuring of Light and disliking it as much as I did, I thought maybe I shouldn't do a review because it would just be kind of a downer. But then I sat down to do my wrap up. I ended up talking for kind of a long time about my issues with Conjuring of Light, and I feel like while they don't make up what I would consider a review, it is a little bit of a discussion of a very popular trilogy, and I think I have kind of a different opinion than quite a few people who have read the book recently on BookTube. Like, I feel like it's just been getting positive reviews, and I saw a lot of things that just don't work with that book. So I've decided to cut the rather lengthy discussion I did of it out of my wrap-up, and I'm putting it in this video, which is a Conjuring of Light discussion video. I'm also doing that because there will be spoilers in this video. Just consider this a spoilery discussion of kind of the Shades of Magic trilogy in general, with a focus on Conjuring of Light. And bear in mind that just because I don't like this book, and overall I'm pretty disappointed in this trilogy, that has no bearing on you if you enjoyed it. And I'd love to hear from other people who kind of maybe have saw the same problems with the books that I did, especially the third book and its pacing. The great thing about books and reading and BookTube in general is that, you know, this is a place for discussion and for dissenting opinions. We'll start off by talking about actually the first thing I read this month, and also the only book I didn't enjoy, and that is A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. So I've been reading these books because the second book was nominated for the BookTube Best of F awards, and since the third book, Conjuring of Light, just came out in February, I decided to jump on the waitlist for it at my library and read it as soon as I could, essentially. And originally I was going to do a review of the whole trilogy because I was kind of doing reviews for all the books I was reading for the BookTube Best of F awards. I really didn't like A Conjuring of Light. It was like 650 pages, and I had to push myself so hard to get it read before I had to return it to the library, because I waited something like 6 or 8 weeks to get a hold of it, and I was not going to wait another 6 weeks to finish reading it. So I really pushed myself to finish it. Pretty much disliked the entire experience. And it's really unfortunate because it cast a pale on the rest of the trilogy. And I feel like I need to say, if you've been watching my videos, if you've seen any of my reactions to the first 2 books in this trilogy, they were kind of my ratings. I originally gave the first 2 books 4 stars, contingent on the trilogy as a whole resolving itself well. I struggled to rate them because I felt like I really needed to see the whole picture to gauge how I felt about the plot, the character, the arcs, etc. And the third book really didn't deliver. And what's really interesting is the third book, the flaws in the third book, because man, it's really flawed. The flaws in it really highlighted issues that the second book in particular had, which when I read the second book, I wasn't happy with it. I was quite dissatisfied with it. But I had a hard time putting my finger on just why I was unhappy with it. And the third book kind of illuminated for me some of those reasons that I hadn't been able to put into words. So I didn't want to do a review of it just because it seemed like a really downer thing to do right after my American Gods downer review. And reviews in general just don't get a whole lot of reviews. And everyone seems to love this trilogy, and I honestly kind of wanted to avoid some of the hate if I did just a straight up negative review for this trilogy. So I'm going to talk about it briefly here, and then we're just going to like wash our hands, move on, and not talk about it again. How's that sound? Okay, really quickly. First and foremost, A Conjuring of Light was bloated. Hugely bloated. Page-wise, word-wise, scene-wise, character-wise, point of view-wise. It needed an edit really, really badly. The first book, we have essentially only 2 points of view. There are a couple of other scenes where you might get like a short 1 or 2 page scene from someone else's point of view. You know, that's not Lila or Kel, but those are very short and they're over very quick. In the second book, we have 4 principal points of view, which is, again, is fine because the 2 extra points of view, one of them, the character was from the first book. The other character, Alucard, was, I think universally pretty well liked by everyone I've heard talk about the book. And then we had a couple of extra points of view that weren't as principal, and they were fine. They didn't add anything to the book. I'm talking about like Holland's point of view. God, I can't even remember. Holland's assassin's point of view. I don't even remember her name. Like, she's so unimportant. I can't remember her name. A couple of things like that. Okay. The third book, I started counting about 20% into the book, the points of view. I hit around 11 points of view, and that's when I stopped counting because Victoria Schwab just kept adding more and more and more points of view. And she was doing that, I think, in some part to try to make us care about some minor characters so that she could kill them off and force an evocative emotional response. It was extremely manipulative. It was also incredibly lazy when it came to the plot. And the sheer number of points of view highlighted a problem in that she showed everything plot-wise. She showed all the sides. She showed what everyone was doing. There was no mystery. There was no intrigue. And that is a problem that occurs in the second book as well. And it was one of the issues I had with the second book that I struggled to understand, like, why was I dissatisfied with this book? Well, one of the reasons is that by like chapter 2 of the second book, the reader knows everything that's going to happen, like main plot-wise. And you're just waiting 500 pages for the protagonists, Kel and Lila, to catch up. That's never a very satisfying position, unless it's really ironic. That's what dramatic irony is, when the reader knows some critical, vital piece of information that's been withheld from the protagonists. And so then it can be funny, it can be used in very subtle ways. That's not done, though. We just know everything. We know what's coming. And so there's no tension. She guts the second book of any dramatic tension that could occur because Holland immediately appears in the second chapter. I don't think I'm spoiling that for anyone because we all saw it coming at the end of book 1, right? And like I said, in book 2, by chapter 2, you know what has happened to him, and you know the deals he's struck, and you know who he's encountered. And you're not brain dead, so you can guess what's going to happen to him. And oh look, it does. It takes 500 pages to get there, but it does. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why people talk about how book 2 is really inessential, because everything that takes place in book 2 has no bearing on what we know is coming. We're just waiting around for the big events to start taking place. So she does that to herself in book 2. And then in book 3, she does it to herself again because, we know everything is going to happen. And so then instead she generates this plot point halfway through A Conjuring of Light to drag out the book. But unfortunately, it's a huge gaping plot hole. It creates a plot hole. Like, there's this huge section where the characters are traveling in the third book, and she throws in a bunch of extra points of view during this journey to try to create sympathy for minor characters. She sort of half-assedly tries to create character development with the protagonists on this journey. It's literally 3 teleport mages who don't teleport when they're under a time crunch and they need to get somewhere quickly and get back quickly. So it's really fucking stupid. It's just 400 pages of stupid. And I think it also, it's a real shame because the only thing this series had going for it was a really a genuinely cool, intriguing magic system. And the whole, being able to travel between different worlds and that really unique teleporting skill of the Astari. Sorry, am I getting that? It's been a month since I read this book, and I've read 10 other things since then, so forgive me if I get a few of these words a little off. But that was the one thing that made them really stand out and was really, really cool. And it's pretty much completely dropped in this book. So you're just like, why? Your one cool, tweaky thing, you're just gonna abandon it. And you're gonna introduce a huge plot hole just so that you can draw out these really pointless character exchanges so that you can kill a couple of minor characters who we don't give a fuck about. Oh, it's just awful. And you can tell very near the end of this journey thing that she realized she had a plot hole, because there's like a throwaway remark trying to justify the journey instead of just teleporting places. But honestly, it's thin at best. And you can, like, if you really critically examine the excuse, you can tear it apart and come up with ways that they could have moved much quicker using their teleport abilities and just cut this entire section out. I'm sorry if you really like these books. I'm sorry if you just love Victoria Schwab. She seems like a really great person on Twitter, but this is lazy AF plotting. Another big issue, and this ties back into like 13 points of view in the third book, is that she introduces a lot of points of view of characters who have been in the trilogy prior, who I think up until this point, we don't have a great opinion of. And so she introduces their points of view to try to, at the last moment, manipulate us into caring about them, into forgiving them, so that, again, she can kill them and manipulate our feelings and make us sad. Like, it's so manipulative, and you're just sitting here going, you're just wasting my time. I don't give a fuck about these people. Could just stop trying to make me care about these mediocre characters. The whole book is just, it's bloated, it has plot holes, way too many points of view. I underestimated how much I would dislike Kel in this book, because I really hated this decision he made at the end of book 2, which if you've read book 2, you could probably guess what it is, because it's extremely out of character, and the only reason it exists is to serve the plot. And she easily could have made a different choice to get him into a situation so that the plot could continue the way she wanted it to without making a terrible character decision. But so I didn't really trust her to make wise character decisions after that, like, just glaring, that doesn't make sense. Why would that character do that? Why would he say that? It doesn't make sense. Like, ugh. But I didn't really trust her going into the third book to make good character decisions, and she didn't, because you have Alucard and Kel sniping at each other like toddlers through the entire third book. And it's like, guys, could just stop acting like fucking idiot douche bros for like 2 seconds, because you guys haven't been this obnoxious through the rest of the series, but suddenly they were just, and like terrible things were happening to them, and like emotional things were happening to them, and they were acting like toddlers to one another, and it was so annoying. And so I would say up until this point, Alucard had been probably my favorite character in the series, and he was so obnoxious by the end of this third book. I've rambled on about this way too long. I gave this book 2 stars. I downgraded my ratings for the first and second book to 3 stars. Overall, I would not give this trilogy as a whole more than 3 stars. I think 3 stars is more than generous, because it has a really great concept, an okay first book, but there's no payoff. She really lost the thread of her own plot and her own world, and it's a real shame, to be honest. Alrighty, so those are kind of my disorganized thoughts on Conjuring of Light and just the Shades of Magic trilogy in general. I am really sad that that's how I felt in the end, because starting out with book 1, I think there was a lot of potential with this trilogy. It had a really unique concept and a unique idea that got lost and did not give reader payout. And that's unfortunate, especially since I definitely preferred this trilogy to this Savage song. I probably will not be continuing on with that series at all, just because I wasn't a huge fan of the first book. Like, it's okay, but I don't think it's great. And after A Conjuring of Light, I don't have a whole lot of faith in her finishing series. I'm sure our Dark Duet is going to be wildly popular on BookTube for the next year. Maybe at some point I'll pick it up, but I don't see myself rushing out to do that anytime soon. Anyways, let me know what your thoughts are about A Conjuring of Light down below. And yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. Goodbye.